Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar brought to you by T&D World, the longtime publication authority on the grid, transmission, and distribution sectors. You're in for a real treat today, a case study with our webinar on how AI-driven storm predictions improved Avista's customer response times and satisfaction. And it is sponsored by AI Dash, a software as a service enterprise, which was recently named on Time Magazine's first ever list of America's top green tech companies. My name is Rod Walton. I'm the moderator for today's webinar. It's a pleasure to be with you. Before I introduce you to our speakers, I want to go over a few housekeeping items to help you have the most seamless and participatory experience that you can have with our webinar. First up, if you're having any technical difficulties, and I hope you can hear me, just look for that question icon at the side there. Click on it, then type in your question and hit submit, and our technical expert will help you out. We also recommend that you disable any pop-up blocking software or extensions in your browser, as these can cause issues with the webinar player. In addition, we welcome your questions during today's event for our presenters. They will get to as many as they can in the Q&A period that follows the main presentation. But please feel free to send them in at any time. You don't have to wait. Just find that question icon, type it in, and hit submit, and then we're off and running. Today's session is being recorded and will be available for free on the T&D World website. That's tdworld.com in the next day or so. So be looking for that. When the video is ready, you will receive an email containing a link to the presentation. You can use that link to go back and review this webinar. You can also share it with colleagues, coworkers, friends in the industry that you think would value from it, and we really appreciate it when you do that as well. So let's get to the topic. Artificial intelligence is an ethereal subject for a lot of people. We hear so much about it, so many contexts, but what is it really capable of? Well, today we're going to see and hear an example of a specific Western U.S. utility, Avista, which needed a better way to predict storms and impacts. And this work they've done with AI Dash resulted in significant success compared to what had happened before. So who better to learn this from than our speakers today, Kyle Carson of AI Dash and Andrew Barrington of Avista Utilities. Kyle Carson is Director of Pre-Sales at AI Dash. Prior to his time with AI Dash, he worked in management and supervisory roles with several companies, including more than a decade with East Coast utility Baltimore Gas and Electric. And at BGE, as an engineer, supervisor, project manager, he also served as restoration strategist during severe storm restorations. Andrew Barrington is product and services manager at Avista. The Spokane-based utility handles electric service for close to 400,000 residential, commercial, and industrial customers in 3 Western states. He joined Avista in 2022 and now carries direct responsibilities in unplanned outages, energy management tools, and billings and payments. And with that, I'm going to hand this webinar over to Kyle Carson of AI Dash and Andrew Barrington of Avista Utilities. Kyle, it's all yours.
Thank you, Rod, and T&D World for hosting this conversation. I know it's common in the utility industry to start with a safety message, so my message for today is to stretch into spring. Spring is officially here and warm weather is approaching, and that means more outdoor activities like yard work, playing with the kids outside, camping, and more. So please remember to stretch before and after any new activities to protect your body from injury. As you heard from my bio, I have over a decade of experience in the utility industry. And throughout my time in the industry, part of my job always included storm duty. Don't worry, I'm not going to go down memory lane today, but I will say that my experience with storm duty explains my passion and excitement for today's topic. I'll get us started with a brief introduction to AI Dash, and then I'll hand it off to Andrew. AI Dash is a software as a service company using satellite imagery and AI to make critical industries more climate resilient. We recently completed a 3rd round of investor funding, bringing us to $83 million in investment, which includes National Grid Partners and Duke Energy. Our first product, Intelligent Vegetation Management System, or IVMS, was the first satellite-powered vegetation management provider at scale for utilities. We lead the market with coverage of over 1 million miles of transmission and distribution assets, This gives us an advantage because, like organic intelligence, artificial intelligence benefits from time and practice. At the end of the day, our data, analysis, and software helps utilities get the right work done at the right time. We have over 125 utility customers in 48 of the 50 states, 5 continents worldwide, and we're proud to work with a diverse group of investor-owned, municipally owned, and co-op utilities, some of which are shown here, and of course you'll hear from Avista directly today. I've talked to many experts in energy response across the industry, and here are some things I hear about all the time. Of course, we all know that weather is getting more unpredictable, from fires, ice storms, to severe hurricanes. We also know that we also all have access to weather data, but it's often siloed and not connected to other data sources. The electric grid, we all know, is also aging, but there is a strong commitment to upgrading assets and bringing in new technology. Outage and damage predictions are often manual, meaning that there's a couple of experts, probably in operation somewhere, that provide outage estimates from their experience. Also, securing enough field resources to get work done is a worsening challenge as well. We hear that utilities have multiple systems, manual processes to addressing these challenges, but there really is no comprehensive system to managing all of that altogether. To that end, AI-Dash's Climate Risk Intelligent Management System, or CRIS, is part of the solution to these problems. The CRIS application combines satellite imagery, outage history, weather data, and network and asset information to give utilities unprecedented insights and a software tool to mitigate climate risk. The system leverages historical and user-controlled weather simulations to identify feeders that need proactive improvements. The weather simulations are worth highlighting because they allow operators to analyze how the system might respond to weather conditions that haven't even been seen yet. The software then allows you to create a work plan to improve resiliency, whether that's adding reclosers, pole replacement, a backfeed, or even undergrounding certain conductors. The system receives live weather data, and it sends notifications about impending storms and estimates, and it also estimates the number of incidents by region within the territory. The unique factor here is that we're using our knowledge of vegetation, proximity to conductors from the satellite imagery. This provides greater accuracy since most outages are vegetation related. CRIS facilitates resource allocation from one region to another and can alert the need for mutual assistance when necessary. CRIS also comes with an iOS and Android-based mobile application that streamlines restoration workflows across supervisors, dispatch, and field crews. And this includes a number of data fields, including pictures, which really helps with communication in the middle of a storm restoration. Finally, the system retains estimates and actuals to be included for future analysis. So as you can see, CRIS is a one-stop shop for data analysis, work planning, work management, and data retention. Here's a high-level schematic showing the cyclical and self-learning approach for the CRIS system. On the left, you see various data sources that I mentioned earlier, and some of this data you already have, like the forecasted path of the storm, wind speeds, estimated landfall. But we're also adding that satellite-based vegetation data and infrastructure data as well. This data is complex and it's difficult to generate accurate and actionable results manually, but CRIS does that for you. Our AI models analyze this data, learning and evolving with experience to predict network incidents and customer outages. The result is our end-to-end software and mobile app and their ability to facilitate effective decision-making, field execution, and data retention for future learning and analysis. The results of CRIS vary based on the specific application, but they have been significant. We're seeing lower storm costs, faster restoration, fewer storm-related outages, and improved incident forecasts. In fact, today, Andrew's going to share Avista's experience with CRIS and incident forecasting, which in one case had greater than 90% accuracy. With that, and in the spirit of March Madness, I'll send a cross-court pass to Andrew with Avista.
Thank you, Kyle, and good morning. Thank you, T&D and AI-Dash for the opportunity here to share. And in the spirit of March Madness, Spokane, Washington, go Zags. Both men and women are in the Sweet 16, so the city is crawling with excitement right now. But yeah, thank you again. I'm going to jump right in here. And I want to start with a story. Um, in November of 2023, Avista found itself at the epicenter of a crisis when the gas control room received a cascade of low pressure alarms. The moment marked a commencement of an unparalleled event. An excavator had inadvertently damaged a gas line, leading to a substantial gas outage that impacted approximately 36,000 Avista customers. The repercussions were immediate. In a rapid response, Avista mobilized hundreds of emergency responders, including mutual aid partners, and initiated a comprehensive customer outage response plan. The incident has etched itself into Avista's corporate history as the most extensive natural gas outage the company has ever faced. So I share that story because at the same time and lurking in the background, we had a severe windstorm en route to our region. Without our AI Dash solution, we don't know if we would have been able to be prepared, whether we would have been able to handle, or even make the decision to move resources back to our service territories in preparation of this event. Would we have caught it? Would we have caught it without the AI Dash solution? And we don't think so. Um, during the same time the outage, we had a minor storm come through. It still impacted close to 4,000 of our customers. But by having this information, we were able to move resources from the gas outage back to their appropriate office locations in preparation for those electric outages that we had forecasted. So I think that's just important how this tool had provided us insights in order for us to make a better decision, where if without it, I don't know if we would have made the right choice. So give you a quick background of Avista. We are located in Eastern Washington as our headquarters here at our Mission campus. We have services in Washington, Idaho, and Oregon, approximately across 30,000 square miles. We also have a small piece within Montana that we take care of as well, which houses a majority of our hydro. So where do we start? The problem space really was we didn't have enough information on these weather events. We found that weather is ever changing within our service territory, and we weren't communicating properly both internally and externally. And that was some feedback we received from internal stakeholders, our customers, and really it came down to the feedback was we weren't responsive enough for these large weather events. We weren't communicating well internally before, during, and even after events. You know, internally prior to AI Dash, we relied on a single person or certain individuals to monitor the weather and take that gut intuition to see what's happening, what do we think is going to be the impact, how many crews do we need, should we bring in extra resources, and then we were also heavily dependent only on open source weather forecasting. So we started these internal conversations with our unplanned outage team, which is a cross-functional team, includes folks in our distribution teams, our distribution operations, data scientists, customer experience, all that. We came together and we asked ourselves, could we leverage future forecast and improve pre-planning? So could we determine what these thresholds are? If we know wind speeds are going to be 50 mile an hour from the northeast, what historically have we been able to handle? How many customers will be impacted? How many outages will occur? Could we start predicting that and identifying these buckets? And that was something we did internally. We were able to identify, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit, of how these thresholds help us make decisions based on expediting the restoration for our customers. And that's when the aha moment really hit the team. We were already working with AI Dash in our IVMS, which Kyle mentioned was the Intelligent Vegetation Management System. And the light bulb moment really came on is if AI Dash could help us with weather forecasting and also take in the data that they already have with the IVMS system to give us a triage report of which areas are more likely to be impacted with a windstorm, just based on the vegetation that they're taking. They're taking annual images twice a year. We also have a tool that we use internally and on the field to take images, take pictures, get a score of our veg management, which is also then embedded into our CRIS system to help us understand. So when we have a 50-mile-an-hour windstorm coming in from the northeast, coupled with an area that we know we have unhealthy trees or overgrown trees, we're now likely to get a score that's going to tell us there's a high likelihood that this area, this particular zone, will see significant impacts based on that weather. And that was the aha. So that was where the team went, yes, this is something that can really benefit us both internally and externally. And we moved into an MVP model, a minimum viable product with AI Dash. And what that looked like was in 2022, the team had deployed this, I'll call it the pilot or phase one. And we had already done, we'll talk about it on the next slide here, but we had already done this threshold identification to determine what's a low intensity storm, what's a medium intensity storm, to a large intensity, all the way up to an extreme intensity storm. And each of those thresholds provided us a time within power could be restored, not for the entire group was an estimate. So for example, we talked about, if it was a low intensity, we could have power restored within 24 hours based on all of our historicals. So what that looked like within the MVP is we worked with AI Dash to produce those thresholds, gave them the background data, and it's beginning, and now it's just learning and it's improving as we move forward. But during the MVP, this is what we would get. We would get an email notification. And imagine, what if I told you you could be told 72 hours in advance that you were going to experience an outage? And put yourself in a customer perspective. Would you feel more prepared? Would you be able to plan better? Perhaps you're fueling up the generator, making sure you have some bags of ice on hand as a precaution, checking on family, neighbors, making sure they're okay and prepared. And that's what we really felt was a big advantage to this, is getting informed 72 hours in advance that we may have an impact on our system. And then from 72 hours, every 6 hours from that point on until the storm reaches our system, we get those updates. And those updates are going to provide us the potential incident count. And we consider an incident as rolled up to the master device. So for example, single transformer goes out, we may have 5, 10 homes on that. That's not 10 incidents, that's going to be one incident. And then we're also going to get what's the predicted, the low, the upper, and the middle. And we also needed, when is the peak storm, right? We know if we can identify when the peak storm is going to hit that region, it helps us estimate how many outages are going to come in after the storm. Folks might not be home, they're sleeping, they're going to wake up and then report those outages. So that's what was really important for us to take this information. And I talked about those thresholds. This is what the team did. We took over 15 years of storm data. And this is really a shout out to the Avista teams here. Every historical storm we've had, our teams have identified that with a storm number. So a 35-mile-an-hour storm from the southeast with those incidents, that's documented as storm number 17. Whereas we could have had a 4-inch heavy snow storm in the middle of October. We had lots of vegetation still on the trees. Maybe that's storm number 79. And we can start categorizing these to understand. Now we have this model that tells us which storm is going to bring what impact. And when we took that 15 years worth of data, we plotted it here to identify, one, the number of incidents, and then how long it's going to take us to get that estimated restoration. So again, you can see what we talked about here is the green was that 24-hour, yellow was that medium, and then we went into the red, which is our large category, and then we also went to an extreme. And typically that extreme is when we're considering mutual aid. So that's another big piece to this, which we'll talk about, is when we can get into these extreme events 72 hours in advance, now we're able to make these early conversations rather than waiting for the incident to actually happen and be reactive. We can be proactive in this approach and call our neighboring utilities if it's needed, or internally plan, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. So within that phase one, here's that threshold identified, which it breaks down that you can see. We have the low intensity, which is going to be up to 100 incidents. And then we also started categorizing that into how many customer impacts. So how many individual customers are impacted by that incident. And that number is changing with each storm we get. We're learning that model, learning that to see if it fluctuates. Maybe a windstorm from the northeast is going to produce 75 customers impacted per incident, whereas a storm from the southeast or southwest is going to only produce maybe 35 customer impacts per incident. But regardless, here we get this threshold. So now we get this alert 72 hours in advance. It starts to categorize how big this storm is going to be. If it's green, we know we can handle it within typically 24 hours, and that's typically a blue sky day for us. We know crews we know internally we can handle those with little to no external resources needed. And then with the medium intensity, we know we can go up to 48 hours. That might take us 48 hours to get every customer turned back on. And then when we get into the large, the red, we're looking at almost 3.5 days potentially, and then up to 50,000 customers. If it's above 50,000 customers, we start knowing that it's a mutual aid scenario where we might need to reach out to our mutual aid partners and have those early conversations. So that's what we did all ahead of the time. That was in the pilot phase. We had this identified, and the results of the pilot were fantastic. We have 12, I'll call them office areas within our service territory for electric. And you can see that here. This is between two different states, so Washington and Idaho. And we were able to achieve an accuracy of greater than 80% during that pilot phase. We had 10 significant storms within that time frame where we relied on the tool and its accuracy to make decisions to help us move resources or plan a little bit differently internally. Again, having 72 hours awareness that something may be coming was significant. In addition to that open source weather data, right? So you're getting different weather media sites are going to provide you different alerts for your regions as well. But now you have something also that's providing you historical data on how your system has behaved to really allow you to make those educated decisions. And just to kind of walk through and go a little bit deeper in the pilot, here was an example of a pilot storm we had. So in November of 2022, our system, as you can see over there in the top right of the graph, that was the model that was coming in. So early in 72 hours in advance, the model was picking up a medium intensity storm for us. By hour 48 ahead of the storm, we were still at a medium. And then 24 hours ahead of the storm, we started seeing that number trickle up. So the model was starting to predict more incidents for our system. So when we see that, right, our confidence level goes up because we start seeing that the model is predicting something, and we need to begin to act on this. But what's great about this is, 6 hours before the storm hit our system, the model fell right within its range. We had a total incident count of 709 total incidents on our system, and the model was accurate in giving us what that looked like. And it did end up turning into a multi-day restoration effort. But this is just fantastic, given the time window that we had, 72 hours notice. We could then begin talking about crews and resources. Unfortunately for this storm, it did impact our entire, all of our office areas. But what's unique about this, and I'll let you put this into perspective, if you have, let's say you have your 12 office areas, and if you have a heavy predicted storm that's going to primarily be focused on your northern territories, would you move resources? So now we're able to have those conversations. Perhaps our southern resources, our southern territories aren't going to be impacted. Little to no impact whatsoever. Could we move crews ahead of time into those office areas to be on site ahead of the event to help with those restoration efforts? So now we're able to not use external resources, but use our internal resources and get that power restored faster for our customers. So here's what a look of the our current CRIS model looks like. And actually, we're going to take a deep dive in just a little bit here to a look inside a day of Andrew when we're planning and we're engaging within our CRIS tool and what that looks like. We're going to provide a live demo that has some storm data from earlier this year. We had a storm that came through, just to give everyone a fresh look at what that looks like and how we navigate through that tool. So this is really important. The way we set this up with AI Dash is we went through about a 6-month environment to get this stood up. So AI Dash had all of our historical storm data. We provide that to them on a continual basis through automation where that is being sent and they're able to see all of the historical storm data, properly allocate it and get it documented in here. But what we needed to do is have this dashboard. Kyle said early on, this one-stop shop, and this is really what the tool has turned in for us. We can come in here and see how many incidents are going to be projected or forecasted within the 72-hour window. What areas have the highest wind speed? What areas are going to be impacted with wind speed? The direction of that wind speed, and then that criticality score. And we're also going to learn when the peak of that storm is going to be present. And also, not only did we need peak, we needed to know start and end. So that's something that we were able to partner with AI Dash in and have them provide us on a customized graph that we'll see in a bit on when the storm will start and when the storm will end. And then we started getting into that potential customer impact, right? Give us a number. And the reason we needed that was some feedback we got internally was how many CSRs, how many call center staff do I need? If we're expecting 5,000 customer outages, how many of those are going to be phone calls in? Do I need to call in additional resources to help us with that? It also is going to give us this incident restoration time. So the model, based on all of our historicals on how we've done in the past, is going to give us an estimate on when we're going to get that restored. And then also we get into the total resources. And this is another big ask that we were trying to leverage and we want to try to grow, because historically we never tracked it. We never kept tallies of it to see where we were at and how we're doing moving forward. And this includes how many locators do we need? How many logistics staff, right? If this is a multi-day event, who's taking care of hotel rooms if we need that? Who's taking care of meals? Mutual aid or not? Operator assistance, all of that information we're starting to track and now ingest into this system, so we have this data moving forward. So we can easily then go back and look at this storm in the past. How many CSRs did we need? How many operator assistants did we need? How many locators did we need? So we have this understanding rather than maybe calling all of our resources at once. Perhaps there's an opportunity to be much more efficient there. And this is one of my favorite slides and one of my favorite aspects of the tool. It's called retrospecting. And again, just a shout out to Avista and the way we've handled our historical storms in the past. We were able to bucket those storms and those individual storm numbers that I shared. And here I'm able to, in real time, go into the retrospecting aspect and compare a 45-mile-an-hour northeast windstorm with snow and compare it to the past 15, 20 years of storm data we already have built in to see how we did compared to that storm. Maybe it was 12 years ago. We had a very similar storm, similar time frame, similar wind speed, similar direction, and I can see how many offices were impacted, the number of customers that were impacted, the total number of incidents, how long it took us to get restoration efforts, and we can continue to see that we're improving, right? We keep doing with the detailed information we get from IVMS, our grid hardening efforts. We are getting better, which is helping us reduce everything related to unplanned outages, right? Faster estimated restoration time, significantly higher customer satisfaction. We're able to see that. So I love this piece, and we'll talk about it and we'll show it here in just a moment. And also it's just really important because if you've seen one storm, you've seen one storm, especially in our region. It's so different. And it's so important for us to be able just to look at this and see how we've done in the past. And here's just an example of what that looks like when you can compare similar storms. So for this example, May of 2023, we had this predicted incident. I can go and select show similar incidents and actually see which storm, how long ago, and those customer impacts, which is just incredible when we're trying to have those internal conversations. So we talked about that pilot program in 2022, 10 storms, 80% of them fell within that accuracy bucket. And that was something we required for the POC. We felt 80% was accurate. We needed high precision on this. We needed to know what offices were going to be impacted, all four, right? That faster restoration, greater customer service, and then internal communication. So we could start having much more confidence both internally, which then expands externally to our customers. Yeah, and here's that case study, which we're going to go through a little bit on the live demo that we provide, that I go through here. But on January 10th, we had a windstorm that came through. It was a 36-hour windstorm. So again, we were notified 72 hours in advance, 3 days in advance that this was coming. AI Dash predicted 163 incidents for us, and we actually had 177 with a 92% accuracy, which was, incredible when we get in there. So again, imagine 72-hour notice that you're going to have this many incidents, this many customers impacted. You can start having those internal conversations, whether or not you need to stand up resource centers, whether or not we need to do press conferences, whether or not we need to bring in additional resources or just internal resources and start collaborating on how we're going to move forward with this event that comes through. So, at the end of the day, when we look back at our pilot program, huge improvement on, rather than requiring one individual or certain individuals to monitor the weather and have that gut intuition that something's going to happen, there's going to be outages. We've taken that guesswork out of it and have really leveraged data, AI, and weather and our ground truth of IVMS. And we've bundled that all together into this one-stop shop tool to allow for greater awareness internally. We currently have over 50 folks within our organization that are active users in the AI Dash model through Chris. They're able to log in, they're able to get notifications, email notifications, text message notifications, again, 72 hours in advance of these storms coming through, which not only help our operations staff, but our field crews, everyone just have more awareness around those storms. And then when we move resources and we're better prepared, obviously that's a much better estimated restoration time. When we're proactive and we're able to see that we're going to have incidents coming, we're better prepared. We're able to be on site quicker rather than waiting for the storm to come through, see the impact, and then send crews out. We're able to kind of be in the right place at the right time to start that restoration effort. And then just overall corporate awareness. Like I said, we have 50 users, cross-functional departments who are all accessing this data to get information, to make decisions, which at the end of the day, we get happy customers with that. So I'm going to pivot and we are going to move right over to the demo here. Bear with me for 1 second. All right, perfect. If you cannot see that, will somebody please let me know, but I'm going to go ahead and move forward here on the demo of the tool. All right, so this is our tool. When we log in, we have an SSO login, which allows us to easily navigate, again, both from a mobile platform or from our desktop computers. And this was a storm on that November 9th that we had just talked about. So you can see here we are 72 hours ahead of when that storm was going to hit. We got a notification that that started predicting. In early stages, we were at 192 incidents, and it had dropped down, if you remember, to that 163 incidents, and we ultimately landed at 177. But here we get this real quick snapshot. We get alerts. We get this icon that lets us know there's something happening. If you're not signed up for alerts, that's where you notify. That's where you can see that we have a forecast. So right here in our top left, this is a graph that we really worked with AI Dash to achieve. We wanted to see, we know that incidents don't happen all at once and then go away. We know that these incidents are ladders. They ebb and flow up and down. So we really needed AI Dash to help us understand when those incidents were going to come in. They were going to go see whether or not.
Hey, Andrew.
Yes.
Apparently, we're having troubles with the with seeing the demo.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Let me see if I can do that one more time. All right. Is that any better?
Double checking from the audience side to make sure,
Okay.
because I'm on your side of it right now.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so I think we're okay. Yeah, I think we're okay now.
Well,
Proceed.
perfect. All right. Well, we'll get back to it. Thank you. So here we were able to get this forecast to show us how many incidents we were going to expect over, maybe over the course of this storm, for example, was 36 hours. Perhaps half of those incidents were going to come within the first 12 hours. Another quarter were going to come from hours 12 through 18, and another 25% were going to come through 18 to 36 hours. We needed AI Dash to help us understand how big that impact was going to be initially. And they've been able to do that here. So we can see through this chart, I'm able to see how many incidents were going to come in, and then how many incidents at what point, where, and then when is that storm going to end. And the same goes for this max wind. We really needed to understand wind is a huge factor for many electric incidents, and it's what it is here in our region as well. So we needed to understand what that looked like. And then in addition, we needed to know the direction of the wind. We know historically that a windstorm from the northeast versus a windstorm from the southwest is going to have a significant difference. The impact is going to be vastly different. So we needed to understand the direction of that. And again, we have this overlaid here with our start time and our end time. And we're able to see what that peak storm was. And this defaults to the region that's going to have the highest miles per hour predicted. And each of these office locations you can actually navigate to, which we'll go to in just a moment. And then down here was the storm criticality, right? We wanted an easy icon for folks to, when they saw this, to understand, is this an extreme storm? Is this a low intensity, or is it high or medium? We wanted that available. And those are all based on those thresholds that we did in the pilot program. However, now that we are moving into production, the system is now learning this as we have new storms coming in. We're seeing how our behavior has changed. All that is really impactful. We get this peak storm time. I can hover over this and it's going to show us what regions, at what point is there going to be that peak for that windstorm. And again, this was the historical data we had back in January for the actual event that came through. And we can see when those areas are going to be impacted, which again, if you knew at 12 p.m. Pacific time today there was going to be an impact, you can start making those changes to schedules, that early collaboration, early communication, and just be much better prepared. And then that customer impact, right? So again, we started out early. We had a default, how many customers per incident impact ratio. We're starting to adjust that and tweak it as we get this new information. What is a branch storm versus a windstorm? What is a heavy snow versus a dry snow with wind? So all of that we're able to, and then we'll be able to, as we continue to grow this model, be able to predict a much more accurate number of our customers impacted for our call centers. So we have that data. Again, like I mentioned earlier, we never tracked that before. So this is something net new for us to do, and super excited about that. And here we have the incident response time. At Avista, we have a really great team that handles our estimated restoration times, our ERTs. We have a dedicated team that is taking in all of our resources, how many we have, how many are on rest, how many open incidents there are to help us estimate that ETR. However, this is a great initial data set for us before we get into the storm to kind of let us know, okay, what's this bucket look like? How big is this going to take us? How does it look like compared to different resources or different events? And then over here on the far right is that total resources. So we can go through here and look at how many operator assistants, locators, CSRs, how many logistics staff do we need? Do we need contractor support? Do we need veg management support for this type of an event? And then, here we're able to make those determinations by using this tool and that model. So I'm going to open up this screen here. And this is a look at again, we're in our, we went to our UAT environment just because we wanted to populate some storm data and we didn't want to put it in production for folks. But here is our environment of that January 9th storm. So we can see, I'm going to move in here to Spokane. But what's so cool about this is I can start looking here to look at wind gusts. For example, let's say I wanted to look at our wind gusts for Spokane in all of our office regions for that matter. I can come through here and start overlaying what that wind gust looks like, what the direction looks like, what the mile per hour looks like, all through a user interface map. Having some slow internet connection here. So here we can see, I'm going to go ahead and clear that section actually and go into Spokane itself for all of you. There we go. So here's Spokane, and I can see what direction the wind speed is going. Excuse me, I'm going to grab a quick drink of water. I'm talking too much. All right, perfect. Thank you. So here we can see what that wind speed looks like, what direction that wind gust is coming from, and also help us better understand how many incidents are going to come through. So here I can see we have 72 incidents forecasted for the Spokane area. And what's even great about this is I can continue to go further into Spokane and fully understand. We break Spokane into 6 different, I'll call them sub offices. For example, our West Plains is up on the ridge. Wind speeds are likely much higher there, not nearly the amount of vegetation as we do perhaps on the South Hill or our South region. So what's great about this is we're able to see which areas in Spokane are going to be impacted greater by the wind or the snow. So we can start, again, moving that resources just internally, which is really fantastic. So I chose Spokane to show just because this one has the most sub areas within that office. But our crews here in Spokane can get this information to start identifying which areas are going to be more impacted, which areas aren't. And also we can track that and see, perhaps we know that when we have a wind speed or a wind event in our far north region, that always continues to get impacted when we have this specific windstorm. Now we can start taking this data and now it's helping us make decisions on grid hardening. Or maybe it is more conversations around IVMS. But this is the really neat functionality of this tool, is you're able to get all this level of detail right from here. And again, I talked about wind gusts. We have temperature, dew point, rain, what snow is forecasted, all through this area. And also you can play it through this module where it'll play like a movie for you over that 6-hour interval data that you're going to get all the way up to that 72-hour mark. So from there, you're able to get all this information and actually watch it pan out and watch it play. What's the forecast doing? What's the weather doing? Which has been really, really helpful for us internally. So I'm going to pivot back to one of my favorite areas here, which is called this retrospect. And when we do retrospect, again, what's so great about this is it's going to take a second here to load, but it's going to, right now, it's taking all 15 to 20 years worth of data that we've provided, all of that storm information, storm data, it's compiling it for us to see in a one-stop shop dashboard now. So here, for example, I can compare all 150 plus storms we've had historically, and I can see which storm is similar to the storm we had. So again, rather than having to rely on weather and we historically, we never looked back. We would have internal conversations. We wouldn't go back and see how we handled a 50-mile-an-hour storm. It was too cumbersome. But now we're able to quickly identify, hey, storm number 17, storm number 35, and storm number 62 were the same or very similar. It took us around 6 to 12 hours to restore. We had this many customers. So we kind of have this gauge now that helps us identify what we need to do in order to increase our customer satisfaction. We feel more prepared going into this. And there's, quite frankly, there's a little bit of excitement around storms, which I know none of us probably want to hear, but I know I get excited when I can engage in this tool and I can see it's a win-win for us. So, right, if we don't have any predictions come in, or let's say a prediction, maybe a prediction falls short a little bit, maybe the weather pattern changed, maybe the wind speed stayed high, it's still a win because we were much better prepared going into that storm. So lots of really great functionality. I want to make sure we leave some time for questions. But yeah, thanks for allowing me to do this demo. Sorry for that minor technical glitch there. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so we can turn it over to questions.
Very good, Andrew. Yeah, thank you. And I think as far as really a glitch, it might have just been a few viewers because we had a lot write in to say they were seeing it just fine. So,
great.
But thank you for that. And thank you, Kyle, for that enlightening presentation. We hear so much about AI, but it's so hard to put into perspective for really useful type case studies, and I'm sure these insights bring up a lot of questions, and here we are ready to dive into those from our audience. And as we move into the Q&A portion, we've got about 10 minutes or so. We'll try to get to about 4 or 5 questions, but you can still send them in, and if we can, we'll get to them as soon as possible. So let me get started with those, guys. Reading them up here. So first up, and Andrew, I think this one is for you. We already use weather data and other open source data. Can this tool include that weather data and combine it with your vegetation data? And is that what you did?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, working with AI Dash, we knew that open source weather is definitely a tool, and it still needs to be a tool. AI Dash is taking their own weather ingestion and they're making their own model prediction of what the weather forecast will be, but they're also taking that open source data and they're combining that. So let's say they take 3 open source and they have their own internal, they're going to combine that to come up with what's the most accurate and merge that all together. And then yes, they're going to combine that with our current veg management. They're going to take that data that our crews are using in the field. They're going to get all that information and they're taking that into the consideration for their prediction and their forecast. And that's what made it so intriguing for us to pursue.
Very good. Yeah, thank you for that. Let's move on then. What are the critical data that AI use to develop, or what is the critical data that AI uses to develop predictions?
Well, I guess I can answer that one. So AI Dash needs quite a bit of data. We definitely need a shapefile of all of the overhead assets, including poles, conductors, preferably with as much age and data about those as we can. We also need protected devices, also with age and things of that nature, to kind of help us get as a comprehensive a picture of the network as we can. As Andrew mentioned, we need a lot of outage data, at least 10, but as much outage information, outage history as we can. Up to 20 years is helpful. Again, with artificial intelligence, the more information we have, the better. We also need information about processes and procedures and anything that around the organization. So, for example, Andrew talked about the threshold upon which it becomes an actual storm incident or a weather event. Every utility is going to have their own different thresholds and their own different ways of handling storms, whether that's by region, operating centers, things of that nature. So all of that information from a procedural standpoint is also critical as well. There's a lot more nuanced examples of information as well, but that's a high level picture of some of the data we need.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, we always wonder what all goes into that. It's a ton of stuff. Next question up asks, does the climate risk intelligent system allow the utility to configure things like storm categories and severities, really get down to, the intensity of the thing?
Yeah, it does. So we have examples, and Andrew spoke to this too. We have the ability to configure the CRIS model to adapt to the specific needs of the utility. So if we at a certain point where mutual assistance is needed, we can configure it to trigger a mutual assistance notification based on that threshold, realizing that threshold might be different for different utilities. We also can categorize things for different storms. Andrew mentioned, they have winter events where weather precipitation, cold precipitation, snow and ice could be a factor. We can categorize storms in different ways to kind of help utilities manage those things differently if necessary as well. So there's definitely a degree of configuration that's possible.
Well, to kind of follow up on that then, what other types of weather events can the CRIS protect against?
Yeah, that's another good question. It's capable of doing a number of different weather events, hurricanes, major regular thunderstorms. We even have a module that does wildfire risk mitigation as well, which is kind of a different element altogether, but it's also covered by the CRIS module.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, I'm going to wrap up with, I think we got basically, we'll get two more questions in here, it looks like. And the question coming up here from an attendee is, do you have models for different precipitation types, such as rain, snow, freezing rain?
I can start with that one real quick. On the Avista side, yeah, we had models based on our historicals, where we knew, how many inches of snow, how many inches of precipitation rain we may see, and the time of year, right? If it's late fall, but we still have a lot of vegetation, right? All of it comes down to the veg. Is there vegetation on our trees? Is there not? What happens if we have wet snow and we have vegetation on our trees? We know we're going to have leaning branches. They're going to be touching wires. Versus windstorms and how that all acts differently. And those were all the models that, we as a utility, if you recall, I said, if you've seen one storm, you've seen one storm, because our utility
Right.
and a neighboring utility might experience something completely different. And that's what was so unique about this solution, is we were able to really personalize it to the Avista model, which has been really, really helpful. But yeah, you can customize all those and come up with your own thresholds based on how your system behaves. But I'll let Kyle add any commentary there.
Yeah, no, I think Andrew covered that one. Thanks.
Very good. So we'll try to get at least one more question in. We'll see how we go. But can you, so this is really kind of a cost benefit analysis type of question, I guess. Can you relate your improved response to, any kind of percentage decrease in response costs? I think they're asking sort of any details on how this can save money, not sacrifice your response intensity or intent, but put a kind of a bottom line on it, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we're working through that right now. We went live with this solution in production in October of 2023. So we're just a few months in, but yeah, our full intent is, as we we're so focused on the accuracy level for the pilot program. And we do feel internally this is a tool that is going to save costs for O&M when we have these events, much faster estimated restoration times. And yeah, I'm excited to share that out as we get through this first year and into the multi-year contract that we have with AI Dash to see this, because we're confident that this solution will improve that. Just from an internal perspective, we're already much more prepared going into storms, making smarter decisions based on the data model. But yeah, I'm excited to have a follow-up with this to share all the great findings that we have.
Very good. Thank you, Andrew. Anything else with that, Kyle, or anything else that you'd like to add as we close here?
Yeah, I do want to mention before we wrap up that in October we'll be hosting our first ever AI-Evolve conference, where utility folks can hear from industry leaders and how they're using satellites and AI to solve some of these issues that we're talking about today. So mark your calendars. The event will be in New Orleans from October 16th to the 18th. So save the date.
Place to be and a good time to do it. So great to know. Well, I'm afraid we have run out of time, and I know that for some of those questions in there that they didn't get to, that they may try to reach out later if they have time, but we thank you for sending those in. And also please remember that the full presentation will be made available to watch very soon at TND World online, tdworld.com. And that concludes today's webinar, How AI-Driven Storm Predictions Improved Avista's Customer Response Times and Satisfaction. And on behalf of TND World, I'd like to thank our sponsors, AI Dash and its utility partner in this project, Avista. Also, let me just take a moment to thank Kyle Carson of AI Dash and Andrew Barrington of Avista for an excellent presentation and really playing such a leading role explaining how this fascinating technology rolls out and improves storm responses. It seems like a perfect union to do that. So before we part ways, let me remind our audience that the PDF will be available and a video included as part of the on-demand offering. And let me not forget our incredible group of attendees. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Thank you for the great questions. We all learn from each other. And with that, we come to a close. My name is Rod Walton, and I want to thank you again for being part of this webcast. Hope you have a great rest of your day and join us again in the future. Thank you and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.